Good morning. Welcome to worship this Sunday, the day after the 4th of July. Hope you all had a safe, enjoyable 4th of July. And today's always an interesting day preaching around this time when so much of who we are is kind of wrapped up into celebrating the 4th of July. It's not a liturgical holiday, and yet it's interesting looking at this religion that we have that's in kind of gets wrapped up in it often. We saw the if you saw kind of as you were gathering a few slides circling through. I thought this one was interesting about how it's not a liturgical holiday, and yet here we are called to feed the hungry, care for the sick, clothe the naked, visit those in prison. Today we're going to focus on a little bit of an invitation that we hear from Jesus to offer rest to those who come to him. I'll kind of be getting into what that might mean for us today in my message. But that will be later, and that will show up in our gospel reading in Matthew. There it is. Well, I grew up with the idea that one should view any open invitation with suspicion. And I don't know where exactly that came from. Not that I came from suspicious people. We were just cautious. Some would say healthy. It was a healthy caution, and sometimes it would work in our favor, and sometimes not, right? So sometimes holding caution, being cautious about an open invitation, that works well, right? You are able to spot hidden agendas that people might have, that they might be trying to sneak in there. Other times, it keeps us from growing in a courageous kind of trust, right? Or even a healthy kind of trust that we're encouraged to develop, just as a matter of being decent and trusting people, building that rapport, building that trust with one another. And we heard an invitation from Jesus today, this big, broad invitation: come to me, all you who are weary and who are carrying heavy burdens. I will give you rest, right? Learn my ways. I'm gentle and humble. You'll find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. And I have no doubt that there are some who hear those words and just wholeheartedly accept that invitation. Trust that Jesus is there and will be there, and that they have turn to those words in times of need, when they've needed comfort for themselves. And it's not that I don't wholeheartedly accept the invitation. It's just that I hear these words of Jesus while Jesus' other words are still ringing in my ears. The other words, like whoever wants to find their life will lose it. And unless you love me more than these other treasured relationships, you cannot be my disciple. Or how about if anyone forces you to go 1 mile with them, go the extra mile. So I want to say to Jesus, yeah, tell me more about this easy yoke, this open invitation. What exactly is that like? How does that play out? Because sometimes we don't know where the invitation will lead us. I heard a story about a poet who did not want to write a poem for this fundraising event. But a friend convinced her that, hey, you might have something important to say. Why don't you write a poem, submit it for this contest? So Emma Lazarus submitted her poem, The New Colossus. And you know the words of that poem. In that poem, we find the words, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, the tempest-tossed to me. I will lift my lamp beside the golden door. Years later, after Emma Lazarus died, those words, that whole poem was inscribed on this plaque and put at the base of the Statue of Liberty. And it's interesting that those words were not part of any official policy of the United States or equal to any of the sacred texts of U.S. democracy. And yet, they've become almost inseparable, haven't they, from that image, from that symbol of the Statue of Liberty. Emma Lazarus had reflected on what the U.S. was becoming at the time. She wrote this in the late 1800s, the 1880s, as waves of immigrants were arriving to the United States. And for some, during that time, it was a sign of what the U.S. was becoming, what kind of people we were becoming at the time, and even what we were, a hope of what we could become in the future as well. And for her part, Emma Lazarus devoted herself to aiding refugees, especially Jews who were suffering from violence in Eastern Europe. Well, Emma Lazarus died from cancer when she was 38 years old. And a friend of hers, Rose Hawthorne Lathrop, was so inspired by Emma Lazarus, not just her life, but this poem as well. And she founded a Roman Catholic order of sisters who are devoted to treating people, to giving care for patients who are suffering from incurable cancer. This is a story of how an open invitation turned into something more than was expected. And I'm struck by how much this poem from Emma Lazarus parallels Jesus' open invitation, right? Come to me, you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. But that invitation, that open invitation, comes in the midst of this surprising context, considering what Jesus said right before about how reluctant people are to accept God's invitation, to accept what God is offering. Because right before Jesus is kind of having this moment of reflection, I don't know what is going to get through to you. He says, John the Baptist came like this dust devil in from the desert with these disheveled clothes and this bullhorn, and you thought he was this madman. You thought he was just this disconnected, raving lunatic. And Jesus is saying, well, I came and said, hey, let's go have a beer together. And you said, who is this heathen? So what's it going to take, right? God is reaching out with this invitation that we're not so readily to accept it. And maybe it's because we're afraid of what accepting the invitation will truly cost, that there's going to be something else hidden underneath it. And what if the rest that Jesus wants us to experience means that others get to experience that same rest too? Well, that sounds hard to argue with, right? That the rest Christ offers should be available to everyone. And it would be easy to just spiritualize this invitation and conclude that the rest Jesus is talking about is just eternal rest, or that it's for an internal reality. It's maybe just a peace that we should know in our minds and hearts, and then we should be good with that. But I think the invitation has a more immediate relevance, a more immediate challenge, perhaps. Because if Jesus cares for those who are weary and burdened, then should we not challenge systems that rely on scarcity and inequality? Systems in place to ensure that the rest and comfort of some comes at the expense of others. And I have to say it's a rather concerning time for our country when asylum seekers can now just be turned away at the border without even having their claims processed or heard. When thousands are at risk of losing their temporary protected status and they face an uncertain future. Well, accepting the invitation of Jesus means that it can pull us into areas that we might not be so comfortable with. Like when our faith is inspired to have political opinions or stances. Meanwhile, we have plenty of other things going on to worry about. Things that we can grow weary from in our personal lives, weary of trying to just keep up with it all, or weary of shouldering more than our fair share. So maybe it's natural to be suspicious of this open invitation from Jesus. After all, what kind of rest can we actually expect to experience? But then again, maybe there's also something more to this invitation. That when we trust Christ's invitation to rest in him, we also find a community of others who are responding to that invitation in their own way. Who are seeking to build trust, people who are willing to find true relief, not just for their own burdens, but for the burdens that others are carrying as well. And if we believe this ease of burden that Jesus offers is not just for us, then we can know the true rest Christ offers. And if we accept that invitation from Jesus, we may not know exactly where it will take us, but we can trust that it will lead us to the heart of God.